We may as well kick things off then. Thank you all for turning up. And if you're watching this on recording, great to have you as well. I've just dropped some links in the chat, which is like the goodies for turning up live. In there, you've got the Pulse report, which is a report that Adam and I built after surveying hundreds of go-to-market leaders. Goes into how people are breaking down their teams, where they really work, what they're working on, and where they're investing moving forward as well. So you get into a live look at what people are doing and also how they're structuring their teams too. We've got a go-to-market health check that we built as well, which is 12 mandatory questions to kind of check your own system and see how it compares to what we're talking about here. We've also got a link to our CRO school, and if you're in Sydney, an invite to our roundtables that Adam and I will be hosting. We want to do some in-person stuff as well. So check those out, and we'll talk through them at the end as well.
Not only Sydney, because Kerry reckons that she can get here from Perth.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, look, if you can make it to Sydney, then you are very much invited. But anyway, welcome to the first edition of the circuit. Adam and I want to do these as a way of getting a bit deeper with our audience. And to be honest, we've been pretty blown away with the response. I think we had over 250 people say they're attending on LinkedIn, which is just an amazing response. And I don't know if it's the title and the topic of what we're talking about. I suspect it is, or whether you've been following Adam for some time or maybe ourselves, but we're really excited to share some frameworks that and actually give you a much deeper look that typically is only available to people when Adam and I work with them. And it all goes into why your go-to-market is misfiring and how to rebuild it from the front lines, especially with Adam's closed circuit selling. The schedule for today is we're going to do about 40 minutes of content. Please drop your comments in the chat as we go. I'll be monitoring that as well as I'll be monitoring Adam to make sure he stays on task. So we'll do 40 minutes of material and then probably 20 minutes of Q&As. And thank you to those who have dropped their questions in advance. We'll definitely get through those. And if you have any additional ones, we'll answer those too. So the session should take an hour. Yeah, really, really excited for that. We're going to kick off with a quick intro to Adam and myself for those who are not overly familiar with us. We're going to be diving into why things are broken, and a lot of that is probably going to be because of predictable revenue, Adam. We're then going to share our framework for aligning go-to-market, talk about the power of cataloging, which is how we fix it from the front end, and then, of course, answer all those questions that you beautiful people have. Adam, before we kick into it and introduce ourselves, anything you wanted to add here to the schedule?
No, not at this stage, but yeah, we'll be able to uncover why we are so hard on, or people that may have even seen me go pretty hard on sales methodologies have basically caused commercial fractures in many plethora of different ways by forcing marketing to do things that are not aligned with the market. And we're trying to we are giving you a clear path on what that looks like to get back to first party intent signal. And we know that we're the only ones able to do that. So that's why it looks a little bit different, but appreciate the amount of response that we've had, whether that's just people that are finally coming around to what I've been saying for these 6 years, or they're agitated because maybe I was right. Not sure, but George will be able to uncover from like a commercial lens what I've been saying to validate why that'll work for you and make you more commercially viable. And that's pretty important moving forward with every leader that's ever been tasked with a task is also tied to what they can do more, or how they can do more with less. And we can get you there.
And Adam, for those who don't know us that well, first of all, I'm George. I co-host the B2B Playbook. I'd say my real expertise is in demand generation. We're between our consultancy, our agency, and our upskilling program, the B2B Incubator. We've helped develop demand gen engines across the globe for the last 5 to 6 years. In our time, we've worked with companies like Webjet and Aon Insurance, emerging ones like MoneyMe, Clipboard, Scootopia. We've had nearly 300 marketers join our demand gen program as well. Myself and my co-host Kevin, we actually started out as pure performance marketers. But on our journey became much, much more holistic demand gen marketers that build both future demand for your brand, but also captured demand out there. But there was a part of us that was missing. And we really have found that in Adam. And Adam, you're a 2-time CRO, a 7-time sales leader. You founded Closed Circuit Selling. And for those people who go at you on LinkedIn and say, Adam, what is your experience to be challenging all of these methodologies and putting forth your own methodology? Would you mind sharing a bit more about your own experience?
Yeah, I think so. Firstly, thank you to all the people that continually challenge me and then realize their own aha moments. I am older than maybe I look. I'll just get that out of the way. So from everything you can see on that graphic right there, I've coached that in all of those methodologies from every head of sales role, and probably a couple that we don't even mention, George. But I started my journey in around 2001 coming out of school. That looked like high ticket, high suiting costs for a company called Christopher Cronus Designs, which was one of the biggest suiting companies in Australia at the time. They sponsored a company called Amazing, which was a TV show for little kids. Anyway, that's rather here nor there. But what I stayed true with that method pre to mass email and mass market penetration through a lot of tools, what I was able to teach my store managers at that time was to get on the phone. But the way that we did that, George, was cataloging what each individual VIP would buy and what made it special for them. And then literally just asking head office when Chris was going to build it. And then we called up those people and created closed door events. So hence the catalog was born, but maybe I took it further. Maybe I took it even further back than that. Maybe it was as simple as like mowing lawns as a kid. Like, who did they use last time? What did they like about? What didn't they like about it? How often would you like to get it done? From there, from Christopher Cronus Designs, I did a couple of front-facing, like door-to-door sales roles, where I was I was recovering also from trying to play football most of my life. I was in a massive accident where I broke my lower back, my hip, my pelvis, my coccyx, my right leg in 12 places, my right leg in 17 places, my left leg in 12, both ankles, dislocated both my shoulders and had microsurgery. If you can see that on the video, that's where I fell through the plate glass. So anyone that's saying that this is bullshit, like, explain to me these scars, and they said I'd never be able to use my hand again. Anyway, that's a digression. But from there, that taught me that I had to basically learn how to be really good at selling again, but not being able to walk. So the way that I did that was in boiler rooms, where I worked a floor above a company called Salesforce with Luigi Prestonenzi. People will know who Luigi is in the sales realm. And then from there, I worked at another company called Fitness First, where I was head of business development. And then from there, I worked into financial, where I met my mentor. His name was Mark Revel. We're a company called EPAC Salary Solutions that sold financial advice. And then from there, we basically just amalgamated that process by cataloging the market. And I used that experience to become every head of sales role for every FMO in APAC. We broke some national sales records, some NES records, some global high performance records. And then in between that, I was doing large contract acquisition, so talent management contracts over $5 million and up. And then we do like micro quotes for like 900K. That propelled me to start talking about all of this experience on LinkedIn. Around 2017, a couple of my papers went viral in Europe, but not in Australia. And then from there, I started really just interviewing people for my own podcast, Better Business Building. I came across George, having at that point just doing like go-to-market strategy advice for companies that were doing venture funding. And then we amalgamated this process to become the school, which is now everything you see in Chief Revenue School. Hope that's not too long.
No, perfect. Well done. Look, we discovered Adam a couple of years ago, or maybe he reached out to us, I think it was. And I just found that he had the most cohesive cross-functional framework that went far beyond just marketing or sales, which is why we were immediately drawn to him. And he was one of the very few, especially at the time, talking about commercial acumen and bringing that back to go-to-market. And he wasn't just talking about it, but he actually had a system to do it, and something that he has battle tested across his 24 plus years across industry vertical. And so we joined forces to share it. And I've encouraged Adam over the years to really start sharing more of this stuff, because before that, it was really, he kept it safeguarded and behind closed gates. But we've tried to release a lot of this as free information. Of course, we keep the great stuff for people like you here. But yeah, it's been fantastic joining forces with you, Adam, to bring this to the people. Well, if you are here, you're probably feeling some of these pains that Adam and I talk about a lot. And those ones really are that lost trust between sales, marketing, and customer success. And I think the reason for that, we're going to get into, a lot of it is to do with predictable revenue, the way teams are structured or incentivized. But there's been a lot of fallout with the way teams are going to market for the last 15 years, and we'll get into that. Also, marketing stuck doing lead gen. I know there's a lot of marketers who have signed up for this session as well, and you probably are feeling this constant pressure to do lead generation, and yet everyone is telling you that you need to do demand gen or you need to work more on brand. But we're going to go into why you are actually stuck doing lead gen. Other symptoms you might be feeling is acquisition costs climbing, you're missing pipeline and revenue targets, there's a turnover of staff, especially at the sales end, and you're feeling a lot of churn at customer success. Anything, Adam, that we've missed here?
No, not at all. Just, yeah, we'll get into why of some of the how that came about, and that you'll see as clearly as what we do. That came about when Aaron Ross obviously released the book in 2011. There were some pre-iterations in Oracle in 2008, but everything became a systemic problem after the measurements actually changed, which changed the tools, which changed the behaviors. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Absolutely, we will. Okay, well, Adam, let's get into that. What caused all this misalignment and pain?
Yeah, so hopefully those on the call actually remember when Aaron Ross's book came out, Predictable Revenue. Now, what that actually did was, on paper, it looked fantastic, and it made it very, very simple for companies to then be able to measure upstream in terms of pipeline, and what that looked like just then changed back from being open opportunities back to meetings. So that made it very, very easy to measure, but the commercial downstream repercussion of that, as we're going to get into a little bit further here, became that then unshackled marketing, disjointed marketing from what sales and marketing used to be prior to 2011, I'd say around 2008, when we used to work together, and that was basically tied to market validations and open opportunities. But that book changed the way, obviously working from Salesforce, the way that business development went to market. They're only tasked by booking meetings. Those meetings means that marketing was only tied to doing actions to feed that beast of mass MQL, meaningless, no intent lead gen. And that also meant that everything else that happened for the sales development or business development function to do market validations, to get the right timing, right accounts, right offer, all of these things that we used to give to marketing to supply, as well as our roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months from first party intent signal. So what we're getting from live feedback sessions, from having actual calls, not trying to sell them the meeting, got completely washed out. That also meant that when we went to customer success, what we used to do for our presentations day, in Australia we call them a live quoting day, it could just be a demo day if you've got a SaaS background, all of that acumen that went from, is this a commercially viable deal for us, here's the roadmap to fill that out. Those roadmaps were called a communication plan handover, and those were assessed prior to the handover to customer success. All of that now sits nowhere. We have an example of a couple of people within our first cohort that had never actually seen a communication plan handover, and they were head of business development.
And we'll go deeper into that, absolutely. And Adam, I think it's really this part that is causing the big breakdown, isn't it? So you've got the SDRs, and if you're hanging out on LinkedIn, you see so many playbooks which are still based around really predictable revenue principles of filling the top of the funnel, and they are hammering through their market, right? Like absolutely spraying and praying through the enormous TAM that they've selected, huge amount of TAM that they're burning through just to try and get a handful of meetings booked. And you see it, right? When people brag about I sent 300,000 emails and I got a 0.9% warm reply rate, and a couple of meetings booked. It's like, what is the point of that? Why are we doing that? And the repercussions of all of that is, okay, you book a handful of meetings. Those people that you booked meetings with, a lot of them never really had any kind of intent to buy. You win a handful of deals out of it. And because there was no good alignment from the beginning, your retention is not great. It's a disaster at customer success, as you've already mentioned. And something we'll get into more as well is it reduces marketing to that lead gen function because it's all volume based, and marketing is tasked with trying to find those people who are next in market for sales to call. They're using very expensive resources to go through all these MQLs. That results in a lot of breakdown between marketing and sales because they say you're wasting our time. And Adam, you still tell me then I'm wasting your time occasionally as well. But I'd like to think we're a lot more aligned than most.
Yeah, unequivocally. But also just a sideways caveat on that, that's also then built the market for these very expensive GTM engineers and every single tech layered stack that goes with that. But that's still only based on hypotheticals of who they think is in market, instead of actually getting back to what it should be, which is first party intent signal from market validations via cataloging the market, which is the model that we'll get into further.
Well, let's just go deeper, Adam, into, I suppose, some of the fallout from predictable revenue. And the first one is low quality meetings. So why does the model that we spoke about here, predictable revenue, why does that result in so many low quality meetings?
Well, because they're pushing people to do stuff that they don't want to do from the start, and or that's how they're measured, right? So they will do absolutely anything to make sure that they can get their $500, their $1,000, depending on where you work, right? If that's what they're incentivized to do and that's how they're measured, that's what they're going to try to do to get across the line. That also means that they've got to be picking up the difference from somewhere, because not everyone from their 97-3 or 95-5 rule means that those people are going to be in market to buy right now, but they still need to hit their target.
And then there's the pressure that happens to marketing, and I'm sure all the marketers in this room feel that MQL pressure, like constantly trying to find people for sales to call. And that, again, is a result of this model, because sales are no longer cataloging the market, because they're not finding out from the market firsthand who is coming into market, when, what they need to win, and having permission to contact them again. All of a sudden, that pressure has shifted to marketing. And that's why marketing is tasked with MQLs, but it was never meant to be our responsibility in the first place. Absolutely, it's marketing's job. If someone is in market and they come through our resources and we see them, they're a hand raiser, absolutely we send that on to sales. But it's not our job to be guessing who is in market and when. That was always designed for sales.
Yeah, and that's where that other piece that we just spoke about, because marketing has to be tasked with that in this model, that's also what's opened up the market for these GTM engineer hypothetical layers of target tech, which still doesn't get you any closer. It just gets you further into the hole of your cost of acquisition.
Yeah, right, because we're just putting more and more expensive tech between us and actually doing this work.
Yep.
Yeah. And so then we've got the sales and marketing misalignment, which is the fallout of all of this. Put simply, sales not liking the MQLs that marketing is sending over, because I think for marketing, it's very hard for us to understand who is in market and when. And sales might be comped on, actually booking meetings or closing deals. And so you don't want to waste their time. And all of that results in also them burning through the market with this model. And probably a reason that the model never really took off massively in Australia, Adam, is because if you took this approach to your market in Australia, where we're a minority market, we've got, 25 million people here, you could burn through your total addressable market with like 2 email sequences. And in Australia, it's so small, you could run into that person on the street, the next week, and someone will say to you, "Hey, stop sending me these emails, you dickhead." Like it'll come back to you. So you're too afraid to run it like this.
Well, we've seen that. We've seen people. Thank you for that funny laughter. But we've seen people that have obviously either used this model through like founder circles, and they've used mass automation tools, and then they've realized when they've gone to a live event that 3/4 of the room doesn't like them and they've never met them before. So you've got to have some type of social conscience as well as brand damage awareness.
100%. And then probably, Adam, I'll let you cover this one, but this is a really big fallout too, right? Sales makes promises that customer success can't deliver because of this model, because they need to push through the deals because of the way they are compensated. And we have the difference here in what sales promise, big, beautiful cruise ship, versus what you can actually deliver.
So part of what I uncovered a little bit earlier was the missing fundamental pillar between what sales used to do when they do a presentation day, a massive demo day, a town hall, a webinar like this, or what we call in Australia a live quoting day, because you were quoting for the business to all the decision makers and the end users in the room. That then sits nowhere, which means there is no plan to go into customer success. So if sales are only comped on meetings up and closed opportunities down once they do the handover, what they'll do is actually skip that whole process of the communication plan handover and the serviceability, where they knowingly will pass over things that they know are upside down on the contract, which say that they physically can't service. So say, for example, if that's large contract acquisition, you know you're going to need 2 people on site, but you know that that annual contract value is not going to cover those 2 people on site. They'll still push it through because they want their money, right? So that's not a commercially viable action. And if you multiply that across all different industry sectors, that's happening left, right, and centre, but it all comes back to the model, as George said, because of the predictable revenue modelling has become paramount within society as norm. People just skip functions that used to obviously alleviate these things from happening as staple pillars and foundational things that would set your organisational success are completely skipped. So if you talk about some of the fundamentalists that are pushing these models still on LinkedIn right now, they, as I said earlier, some of them have actually never seen a communication plan handover. So for some people in North America, that might be a mutual action plan, or that could just be a serviceability plan, but that would actually say what the mutual steps are, who's involved, what the backup contacts are, what that contacts look like, do they like donuts on Tuesdays, all of these things. Without that, sales will say absolutely anything to get the contract signed to go to settlement, not absolutely knowing that there's probably little chance that that can actually be serviceable because they'll still get paid. So if you look at that and then you go further than that in terms of the company-wide structure, then who's actually paying for those people to get paid for those job actions? That means they're not going to be making live contracts that is going to have build and bank revenue at the other end, right? The answer then will be the VC that give them the roadmap of their funding ramps allow this to transpire because generally they've also got vested interests in not only that model, but the tools that are tied to that model that they need to use to calculate the hypotheticals. And that's the ramp that muddies the water between that actually being a commercially viable action. I know I've said a lot there, George, but hopefully that makes it more clear to what we've been saying about all of these pillars across closed circuit selling that we teach within Chief Revenue School, because we want to be able to lift the commercial acumen of the people that are in charge of every one of these departments so they have a clear line of sight.
Yeah, and on that, Adam, I mean, maybe we did mention it. I don't remember, but also the deals that die at the last stage with legal or with the CFO, because as you've already said, you're upside down on those deals. And that's not to mention like the enormous expense that we went to in filling the top of the funnel in the first place, of marketing doing the expensive lead gen, of the SDRs like plowing through the market, the AEs sorting through that, expensive sales resources sorting through that, pushing deals through only for them to churn and be upside down or get stopped by the CFO or legal.
So as we know, George, great point. For those that aren't aware or haven't looked at a whole lot of our stuff and are hearing this for the first time, that's actually tied to the action that makes sure that this is going to be commercially viable at 3, 6, 9 months from your market validations for cataloging the market, right? So you would cover off on, will this pass legal, will this pass credit, in that timing to make sure that you're not going to be pushing deals that aren't going to pass your internal billables. That also gives you the ability from that first party intent signal to map out, if you can't meet those, when could you? So say you're a little big company that wants to play in that large enterprise space, you would then have a roadmap or your product roadmap from that live feedback from first party intent signals, from those validations of where you would need to be to service those types of deals for the next 12 to 24 months. All of which is missed by the models that push either upfront qualification, like pushy deal tactics to get the meeting, and or the predictable revenue model that only pushes the meetings.
And I think probably this slide probably summarizes all the probably fallout that we've spoken about, right, Adam? I don't think we need to go into this any further, but yeah, it results in absolute burnout for your staff. You end up upside down on deals. Commercial acumen's been wiped out of your whole go-to-market. There aren't any solid feedback loops as well, which is something that we get into a lot in our frameworks that we've joined together, Adam. And you have a lot of wasted resources too. And we are going to share exactly what that framework is. We're going to go into a lot of detail as to what that looks like in a couple of slides.
Are we? No, I'm kidding.
I'll do it if you don't want to.
Oh, either way.
And again, I just want to double down on like, why is marketing reduced to that lead generation function? Well, it's because we're trying to fish for people who are in market right now. And we quickly exhaust that list of in-market buyers to hand to sales, right? And we all know that as marketers. We're capturing demand. There's some out there. We hand that over to sales. It's fantastic. But then inevitably the business wants more. And then we try and scale that up. But there's just only so many people who are in market ready to buy right now. So then we start trying to capture the details of people and determine when they're in market and when they're not in market. And so we run these lead gen plays to do that, like gated ebooks or whatever it is that we're doing. But the truth is, we're just not very good at doing it. We can't do it that well. Like B2B buying is complex. Unless you hear firsthand from someone when their existing contract expires, if they're already with someone, you don't really know when this is going to become a priority for them or when they're going to enter a buying cycle. But we're still burning tons of cash on tools and tech to try and figure this out, where the fix, Adam, has already existed before, right? We can actually go back to some really old principles and bring a new twist to them to get that information as to who is in market and when, which ends up alleviating marketing from lead generation and gets us back to doing what we do best, like building trust with the market, educating, building memory. Like that's the thing that we do really, really well. And this fix, Adam, it's called cataloging the market. It's what BDMs used to do. It's what your mentor taught you to do. It's what you've done for 24 years across industry vertical with a lot of success. And we're going to get into exactly what that looks like too. But before we do that, one more slide on how people have tried to fix, Adam, the silos that this current system that predictable revenue has created, because we've got sales doing their own thing, marketing doing their own thing, customer success doing their own thing, and all incentivized differently and none of it gelling together. So what are some of those silo enhancements or band-aid fixes that departments have tried to do?
Well, I think you answered your own question with the question. All of these methodologies, so if you look at back even our first slide, so Spin, Challenger, Gap, Miller-Heiman if you're in large corporate sales, that's really only qualification of the deal or deal mapping, or it's before the fact, right? That doesn't actually bring marketing into the fold. That doesn't actually roadmap what their pathway is into customer success. It only makes that individual silo action slightly enhanced, which is why I go pretty hard at the other CRO programs that are spruiking commercial oversight when they're actually just talking about a rebadged silo enhancement tool. So all of those don't actually cover any type of revenue alignment architecture. There's nothing actually linking from sales to the market, from market back to marketing, from marketing to sales to get into those deals and then straight across to customer success, which is kind of what RevOps should have been from the start, but never was. But I'll let you answer that, George.
So the answer to a lot of this comes down to, again, old principles with a modern twist. It's a system that allows your sales, marketing, customer success teams to operate not on like guessing, but real market information that you've actually captured firsthand, and also real feedback loops hard-coded into the system. And what that is I think this is the real money slide. I think this is why people are here, Adam. It looks maybe a little overwhelming at first glance, people, but we're going to talk you through step by step what this closed circuit system is, what cataloging is, and how it actually has those feedback loops built in between sales, marketing, and customer success and operates like a circuit, which is, of course, why we have the circuit. Okay, I think we'll start off at number one here, Adam. So business development, we're going to start here. What's the first action that business development do?
Okay, firstly, for those that are still questioning whether this would actually work, my mentor, Mr. Mark Revel, taught me this from 30 years of banking experience. And I used to freak out on the phone, even after having done this at Christopher Cronus, Fitness First, and some face-to-face roles, because I thought that if they said they already had a supplier, then that was actually the end of the call. And he's like, no. That's the start of the call for when you can learn what you need to learn and build that rapport with a lower barrier to entry to find out who they're with, what they like, what they don't like, when that might be up, would they be open to looking at when the grass is greener, do you have permission to call back? That then gave us the timing to be able to give that to marketing. So that enabled marketing to be more commercially viable by knowing when they're going to come into market or when we needed to build out what we needed to build out for their timing, not ours, within 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Sorry, George, if I went over in the next one, but yeah.
No, that's great. So, Adam, when you talk about cataloging, you mean literally contacting these people one to one, be it in-person meeting, phone conversation, email, but we want to keep it a live conversation, ideally, or through a survey, whatever it might be, to literally find out who is their current provider, like what do they like, what don't they like, what's their contract date, do you have permission to circle back at the right time with the right information for them? Is that correct?
Yeah, so for those that are still questioning that, right? So think of it like this. You've then got a qualification of that category if they say yes. You've then got timing for when they might be in market. You're then able to qualify that in terms of when marketing needs to be able to build this out for you. And that takes marketing away from being just lead gen junkies that are never going to be able to be commercially viable, or doing actions that they know through performance marketing is not actually going to work, right? So you want them to be, yes, so manually going through and having these one-to-one conversations. I did get a little bit more technical towards the mid-2000s doing this through town halls, where I'd invite groups of employers and do it in one to few at the same time. But yes, that's the core action, because you want them to be qualified that they've got that defined category, and knowing that if they've got all of these things up front helps you to be able to find out where the gaps are.
And then the next step then is this information is passed on to marketing. And for the marketers here in the room, and even for the salespeople who want their marketers to be more closely aligned to them, imagine marketers, if you knew that for everyone in your target account list that you were aligned with on sales, if you had this information in the catalog about what vendor they're currently working with, who they like, what they like about it, what they don't like about that solution, you find out what that gap is, and then you can build these educational and trust building campaigns as well. You can then also on the sales activation side, you can provide them with the correct resources to take back to that account at the right time as well. And it gives marketing also more commercially viable actions in the right place with the right ingredients. So we're not just creating all these decks and all this information and not knowing exactly who it's for or when it's going to be used. We also have better marketing resource allocation as well. And Steve Patty spoke about this in an episode we did with him lately when he was selling data warehouses, data services to people. And if you find out that an existing account that you're targeting has just signed with a vendor and their contract isn't up for 3 years, well, you don't need to spend all your marketing resources on them from right now. You don't need to spend your sales resources with them right now. You can now start to actually tailor when you do that reach out, when you use your marketing budget on those people as well.
Sorry, George, not to cut you off, but it'll also help you for those that have got questions around that have obviously been at the best providers in the market, right? In terms of price, you would know. You then have to be able to qualify that you can service their contract better than more of the. If you've got a massive margin between what your price is versus the market, you have to know that information up front, because you're not going to be able to do it any other way. So yeah, anyway. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to jump in. We've got a good question from Monica. She said, do you record this information after cataloging anywhere? Great question. Absolutely. So it's a standardized way of collating this market intelligence. And so it should be done ideally in a CRM, in your HubSpot fields or Salesforce fields. So you want to get those built out. But rather than it just being in the notes section for a BDM, like in one of their Excel sheets or however it is that they work, it's a standardized way of recording this information, like current vendor, renewal date, likes, dislikes. So then you have that information, which for any leaders who have joined us is so valuable, because when inevitably that salesperson leaves you, you don't lose all that intelligence as well. You've still got that in the system on an account level basis.
It also helps streamline that way that it's unified between sales and marketing. So the head of business development, head of growth knows how many they've given to the CMO and their team to action, and then how many of those are actually going to open opportunities, so you can work out how efficient you are through that action. Worth noting, through that first punny intent signal in that layer, just before we get to the next bit, you'll also then map out. So say, for example, that those that aren't going to be in market for 3, 6, 9 months, they will also tell you where you would need to be in terms of product or service delivery for the next 12 to 24 months. So both of which of these actions, in terms of right now or later, are missed through the predictable revenue and every other sales methodology on the market. That's why this is critically important for first-party intent signal to obtain these details.
Probably something I'll just quickly jump in and add, Adam. And look, if marketing in this function here, if we do get an inbound inquiry, a hand raiser saying, I want to speak to sales, then of course that goes back to business development and they go through the same process. So Adam, we've got so far BDM goes to market, catalogs, that information's passed on to marketing, gives them right channel, right timing, ingredients to win, which enables these functions. Then the next step is it goes back to business development. And what happens here?
Yeah, so for those old enough to remember, or those that have obviously looked at a lot of our stuff, you would know the next step will be to organize a presentation day or a live quoting of the business day, where that will be all the key stakeholders from that company as well as the end users. The reason that you do it that way is to make sure that the users are going to be able to do it while the decision makers in the buying committee are in the room to make that decision. And you can lean into what we discussed earlier, your communication hand planned over. I just got a message. Your communication plan handover for serviceability to make sure that you're not upside down on the contract. So what that looks like would be a presentation very similar to what we're doing here, George, where you have everyone in the room. You can work around the room to make sure that they're all critically aligned. And then you can even introduce them. This is what we used to do for large contract acquisition or financial advice. Introduce them to their key account management team from the room. So then you know what your settlement team's going to look like and what that's going to look like in terms of handover to make that silky smooth. You can also then direct from your communication plan handover what those touches look like, what the frequency is, if they need donuts or croissants or whatever they need for gifts, what that looks like, right? That also then makes sure that you can do business then and there, and you can ask from the room, is there anything sticky about your legal clauses that's going to get us unstuck? Because I know how George loves to go back to being a lawyer like he was before. That's a funny joke for people that don't know. He hated it. Or will the deal pass credit? Now that's important. Obviously, if you're in financial spaces and you're doing like a sale and leaseback for 110,000 vehicles, if they can't pass credit, they probably can't do a sale and leaseback, no matter how big the margin is on the deal. Right? Fair enough. So you want to make sure that these things don't come unstuck later, because if you look at like the SaaS model that lean into the predictable revenue, they don't actually have these steps. All of that will just become redlined at the end. And then you realize that, oh shit, I can't actually make any of this happen. And all of this pipeline's actually just hypothetical. So if you do it this way and map it out as you go, you actually alleviate those things just by having a standardized structure.
Right, we're going beyond just like ICP fit and like ideal vendor fit. And that's only enabled by doing this cataloging at the beginning. Because when you do it at the beginning, you know that we're not just filling the top of funnel with a bunch of deals that are going to churn if we push them through, or we're never, ever going to work with us in the first place. Yep. So Adam, we've got, again, just to go through it, we've got BDMs, they catalog the market, passed on to marketing. The BDMs circle back to that account that they cataloged at the right timing with permission, with the information that they got from the catalog as well. That then is pushed to the live quoting day. From there, we have a communication plan, which details everything that is needed for a good, successful handover. Then what happens then at customer success, Adam?
Yeah, so then if that does go to customer success and you mutually agree from the room, you then pass that over. From the room, you can do your live deal pack. That's the way that we would like to do it, so you can get electronic signatures to make sure that they've received it. That then covers off on the fact that they don't have the paperwork, which could be an excuse down the road. Oh, Adam, I don't have that, I don't have this. Well, you do, because before you left the room, we made sure that you had the pack, right? So that covers off on all of those objections. That also manages the expectation of when they're going to be communicated with and at what touch point. And that just becomes the customer success plan. Now, at that point, which is also now not taught, is how to then ask if they're being exceeded of their expectations, who else within their product sphere could also operate from or benefit from these products in terms of like from their referral network. That also then allows you to do that. Without doing this step, you can't ask that question.
So then we've got that then for the existing accounts, Adam. So the ones that you win, so they then go and catalog them too, as you said, to look for those new opportunities to upsell, cross-sell. And then for accounts that they've lost as well, contacting to find out, why did you leave us? What could we have done better? And Adam, you've done this a number of times in different roles, right? Where that's actually turned into a one deal, right?
Yeah. But like, you have to be able to do that and ask those questions, or you're just setting yourself up to churn. So if you've done all these things right, you've actually alleviated that from happen. But if there are some that are still going to drop off for a certain period of time after probably the first 6 weeks or longer than that, if they become clients for whatever reason, that's also a learning opportunity, as well as you'll also have the catalog of when their contracts are up, which you then hand back to business development. I know there's probably account managers in the room that have just gone grey in the hair for me saying that, but business development is more equipped to handle those conversations for renewals, and that's where it should land.
All right. Adam, and that's the circuit, really. I think people are going to have questions on this, and we'll address them at the end. Was there anything else that we needed to add to this before we move on? Because I'm just conscious of leaving time for the live Q&As at the end as well.
Yeah. Now, just people that have texting me, I know that some people have said that my volume is less. We will give you a copy of the video later.
Okay, beautiful. So really comparing the two systems, Adam, I suppose like the predictable revenue model, it's really about MQL chasing, a lot of demo spam, results in a lot of SDR churn. And because you're not actually getting the first-hand information from the market, your forecasting is off as well, because you don't really know when someone is in market, what it's going to take to win, or any of that kind of information. Versus the circuit, the system that you've used for so long, you have real commercial truth, first-party information sourced directly from your BDMs. You've also built some kind of relationship with that customer. It's built around the buyer's timeline as well. There's hard-coded feedback loops as well between sales, marketing, and CS. And there's obviously incentives and KPIs, which of course we teach people too, into how to make sure everyone's very aligned with that too.
Yeah.
As to why the circuit makes so much sense and why I found it really attractive when I first came across it, was it just makes sense. We all know the 95-5 rule. Marketers in particular pay attention to it. The idea that of your total 100% of the market, only 5% are in market ready to buy at any given time. The other 95% are out of market. They're with an existing vendor, or they haven't felt the pain enough to really solve your problem and come into market. Now, as marketers, we understand that. And so we try and cater to speaking to people out of the market to build trust with them. But the reality is, I think sales, Adam, need to acknowledge this reality too, because unless you're selling Zoom in the pandemic, there's a good chance that there's people that you're speaking to that you've either gone outbound to or have inquired and are a little earlier in their journey that are actually not yet ready to buy. They're not in a sales cycle yet. And so we need a system of really cataloging them, finding out what's important to them and coming back to them at a later date versus just trying to push them to a meeting at all costs.
Or if you're selling Salesforce at the dawn of CRMs.
Yeah, that's right. And then probably another good interesting piece of research, excuse me, is this research from Bain, which shows that 80% of companies in market will not buy from a company unless they've heard about them before. So reaching people before they're ready to buy is incredibly important, not just for marketing, but for sales too. So when you combine that statistic with the last one, so if only 5% are in market looking to buy right now, and only 20% will consider buying from you if they haven't heard about you before, you end up with a tiny percentage of people who will buy from you if you're not speaking to them before they're looking for a solution right now. And that's why it feels like finding a needle in a haystack for both sales and marketing, because it kind of is. And so that's why this system uses those touch points to gather intelligence, to come back to the buyer at the right time on their terms, and also gives a strong brand impression. Now, just a bit of proof and what else this unlocks. This is from someone who joined CRO school, who told us that they spent $6,000 plus chasing an account that was never going to be a good fit. And they found that out when they finally started cataloging. So they finally had the ability to start going out and doing some cataloging, and they realized that there are all these accounts that they were chasing that they thought looked really, really good on paper. But when they cataloged them and spoke to them, they found out that the features that that particular account really needed was never going to be on their own product roadmap, and their competitor did far, far better. And so the catalog made sure that they weren't going to be upside down on that deal, or if they did that in future, that they wouldn't just be filling their accounts with ICPs, but ideal vendors instead, people that we know are really going to be a good fit for us. And Adam, that's why I guess this cataloging process helps you become more commercially viable, right?
Yeah. So that 100% correct, because they wouldn't have had that information from first party intent had they not done that, and couldn't have been more thrilled that was with what they found when we eventually convinced them to start doing it.
And then I want to get into as well, I don't know if he's actually here on the call with us. JP, Adam, do you just want to talk about JP?
Yeah, so I don't know if those of you that did see that JP did a bit of a shout out to some of our help for the last couple of years. He was lucky enough to be in our first cohort, and he was a bit skeptical at the start, but obviously started with some convincing to try some of these methods, and this was the result.
We would like to share or understand how we are going with this. And for me, it was a total success and an unexpected success. As a matter of fact, last month, I created my biggest opportunity ever just doing that. And the thing is that I did 4 successful sessions of cataloging the market. And my market, what I sell is Marketo services. And the market, I don't know if any one of you sells to marketers, but marketers or marketeers are really suspicious about what you are trying to sell to them. So that we are closing the deal right now. And this was in a month. I closed an account that I was chasing for 2 years with no success. And so I'm really happy. So this approach, like low pressure, like I'm just trying to understand how to help my market, but you are part of the market. This creates like confidence and trust. I told my boss, and he said, continue doing that, because he was skeptical. Saying, she will never buy from you because she's really happy with another company.
So this is a showcase to show that enables you not only to have a lower barrier to entry, but enables you to speak to a wider portion of the market and educate. Because as Mark told me when I first got on the phones, for financial advice and salary packaging, you want them to have another supplier, as JP found out, because then you can educate and ask questions, and then you can find out where the gaps are.
Yeah, exactly. And it lowers the barrier to entry, right, Adam? Like, it makes it so much easier to have that conversation when your objective is to catalog and not to push a meeting.
So think of it like this, for those that are listening to this live or listening to this recording. If you act as an account manager for an account you don't yet have, you're just giving them advice on what could help them win, right? You're not actually selling them anything, and positioning yourself from there enables you to build that rapport and that trust and that relationship up front. And then it's pretty easy because you're basically just giving them that information, and then it becomes them coming back to you with, yeah, I'd like to do this. This is our timeline. Then you can bring marketing into the fold.
And for those who have an existing system, I love Adam. He's always experimenting and doing crazy things, probably what marketing should be doing, but he's a marketer at heart, I think. Adam has built just a QR code here. And if you scan it on your phones now, it'll prompt you within ChatGPT to have a conversation to see how closed circuit selling, that framework, compares with what you're currently doing. We don't have it preloaded with information or anything. It's not reading from any of our documentation. It's just a starting point for you to have a conversation to see how it compares to what you're currently doing.
And for those of you that want to understand how we're able to register within AI searches, you probably need to join CRO School.
Well, and we'll get to that. Look, these are our call to actions, people, and we are going to get to the live Q&As very, very shortly. So we'll race through this. And depending where you're at in your journey with us, there's a few things that you can do to take action to start implementing this in your business. The first is register for your go-to-market health check. I think I've got 5 minutes there. It's probably more like 7 minutes. There's 12 core questions that you'll answer, and then you'll be able to get tailored feedback to see how your system compares to this, what it might be missing. Pretty easy to use. It won't take you too long. We're also going to send you the benchmark that we built from speaking to hundreds of go-to-market leaders called the Pulse, to find out how they're structuring their teams, what methodologies they're using, and where they're investing. For those who are actually ready to take action and you want to start implementing some of this in your own business, we have our CRO school, and that's the last couple of slides. People who have joined it, you saw the outcomes that they've been getting. We have really 3 key ways that you can participate in that. We've got the light self-serve version, which is where you go through it in your own time. You get, again, the strategy, the tools, and the templates to execute all of this. And you also get a one-to-one session with Adam and myself. Those are limited as we can only do so many of those. We have the cohort version, which is where you will jump in a cohort with a bunch of other current and aspiring go-to-market leaders. We run through the program over an 8-week period. There's a bunch more live Q&As, and we can guide you more closely to installing this system as a pilot within your business. And then for any who have that, who want that full install, we do offer that to an organizational wide rollout. If you want to check out exactly what's involved, or if you want to chat to Adam and I to see if you would be a fit for any of those 3, scan that QR code there. That'll take you to our CRO school page. Also on that page, we have a mini series that goes into more of this too. So make sure you scan that QR code and go and check it out, or just Google CRO school and it's the B2B playbook link there. The third option is if you are based in Sydney and you want to come and hang out live with Adam and I and other revenue leaders, we're going to be starting some roundtables, small, intimate roundtables, no more than 20 people. If you're from sales, marketing, customer success, or RevOps, we're going to have some practical sessions, people sharing exactly what is working for them, and we're going to be doing those monthly too. And if you just want more information and you're much earlier on in your journey, Adam and I still have like a lot of mini series that we've done around this. We did a great episode with Steve Patty on why MQLs are broken, or why broken sales methodologies are not enough. And you can find those on the b2bplaybook.com. Anything I missed there, Adam, before we jump into the live Q&As?
No, not at all.
Okay. I'll just also chuck in the chat the links to some of that stuff too, people. Okay, live Q&As. I want to jump to Pete, who he said, how does cataloging change when it's a new offering that buyers don't have an incumbent for?
Then you've got to find out how they're solving that problem right now. And as you're doing that, have more uncovering questions to define your category. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty difficult. So that may look like asking more uncovering questions with different layers. So yeah, it's almost, that's probably the most difficult, but pretty much what George and I have done here for creating this revenue alignment architecture as a category. Which would have obviously been easier just to come in through a different category.
Okay, we've got another question here that someone sent in advance too. How would you make a commission-only sales position attractive enough to entice the right contract BDM?
Ooh, tough question. You're not really going to attract, despite what TikTok tells you, you're not going to attract someone that has multiple vertical experience as a BDM with life experience that can negotiate contracts, catalog the market, get market signals, find all the timing, negotiate the contracts, do all this up front, that doesn't have any, obviously, life expenditure. So they're not actually, the only people you're going to attract to that are either going to be retirees, which may have, or the entry-level people that have never done it before that are going to try to talk their way into obviously working in that role, which I would act with a side of caution, because if you do that, you're going to go straight back to torching 95 to 97% of the market without actually validating your product or service, which is going to be detrimental to your brand.
All right. Alex, how would you get the attention of companies who have historically solved the problem with internally built custom tools?
Yep. Again, it's all part of the catalog. Everything comes back to first party intent, which you need to uncover how they're solving that right now, what the gaps are, what they like, what they don't like. Is there an opportunity to see when they would look at something different, what that would look like, how would you get invited to that process. All of that is critical to first-party intent, which comes from market validations, from cataloging the market.
So it just comes from that cataloging process then, like literally finding out firsthand.
Yep. Because you're not going to be able to push those people. Again, this just validates this whole process and circuit, because you're not going to be able to push those people into meetings they don't want to take for if they've already got the solution in place. What you need to find out is how they're solving that, what they like, what they don't like, and is there an opportunity where they'd like to see different with a no pressure ask. Asking this and working from there lowers the barrier to entry, increases your rapport, and enables you to ask those questions.
And probably comes back to what we were talking about earlier, Adam, about how that information is then passed on to marketing, which deals with the product roadmap too. Because there might be a good reason that they don't want to go with you because they've already built internal tools. You might not be solving a pressing enough problem for them. Yep. And you're going to find that information out by speaking to them firsthand. That gets passed to marketing. That then goes to product. So you're building something that people actually want. We can't force people to take meetings that they don't want to take.
Yeah. And the commercial repercussion of not doing that process, which George just diligently provided there, is all of your C-suite, and I don't know how many times anyone on this call has seen it or listening to this recording, that pushes your C-suite to then going having side rooms, strategy council sessions to hypothesize about what your product roadmap should be without mapping it to your first party intent signal from the market, which is dangerous, right? For obvious reasons, hopefully.
Okay. Do you need really experienced salespeople to be executing cataloging the market?
Yes and no. So if it's a very defined category and you can teach them how to ask those questions, you will get away with someone with less experience. However, those that are old enough on this call or listening to the recording, you would remember prior to the predictable revenue modeling, most business development people were senior in their role, so they were speaking to peers, but they also learned everything was inside of the contracts from being inside of a CSM or a CSO role first. That used to be the groundwork to be able to talk about the deals, the contract, everything inside of the contract before you'd have a chance to be at the front-facing role. I would heavily recommend finding your people that are going to be doing these processes from learning all of your product inside out first, from being in that seat for at least 1 to 2 years.
Good question from Jared here. Since it sounds like this is an organization problem, how do you work with the top and work down to implement this organization change within the company?
You really just need to be able to manage upstream what it would look like to be measuring market validations and what that would mean across your funnel to everyone involved, and then show that as a commercial consequence upstream, and then you should be able to get buy-in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with showing that there's something wrong with what you're currently doing and then proposing a pilot. And that's how we normally work with organizations, is not to just stop everything you're doing right now and completely change your system, but to start with a pilot. One that has the system, one versus what you're currently doing. And you can have like a small pod to execute that and to prove out that this is a much more efficient and effective way to go to market as well.
Yeah. You may also need to diarize that into a business case depending on the size of your organization.
What else have we got? We've got this one here. Why does a live quoting day remove the need for a separate discovery call and a demo call?
Well, it depends on the size of the contract, because that can still be in place of a demo call in 1-to-1. But what you'll find, the more that you move upstream, or the cost or the value of your contract, if you can have your buying committee as well as the end users in the room, and you can present to them the solution, answer any questions and objections as they come up live, and also introduce them to their account management team and walk through your communication plan for your serviceability, you're going to be crossing out all of the issues that are getting pushed down to, as you see on LinkedIn, CS reactivation requirements. That never existed before when we followed this process. So let's get back to that.
Good one here that was sent in advance. What becomes the new measurement for sales and marketing, if not meetings and MQLs?
Ooh. George, the CMO man, what would you like it to be? Those old enough to remember, because I'm in my mid-40s. the measure used to be market validations, but what we would suggest, and George can tell me if I'm flying uphill here, but I already know the answer. How many of those market validations are passed to marketing, and how many of those market validations go to open opportunity?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then on the marketing lens, moving away from MQLs, having those joint targets with sales as well, but also like how many times we are passing information back, the creative back to sales, especially for those that are coming into market. So making sure that for those catalogs, we're actually passing that information back. And then, of course, on the brand side of marketing, those more traditional brand metrics too, to make sure that we are making an impact in our market.
And in larger organizations, if anyone's going to ask this follow-up question, that would then look like those templates and tools inside of your internal ticketing system, and how many of those are action that went to it to obtain a business outcome.
Another question from Pete. How different does the core methodology get if you're selling into government and or primarily winning sales via tender submissions?
Interesting question. So you will then obviously just need to know what the key criteria is up front in the catalog. So it's honestly as simple as that. For those of you that have followed me through my whole career, from EPAC Salary Solutions to RACV Finance to LeasePlan Global to a Remunerator Finance to Oryx Financial to Lendly Pay to anyone else that you need me to mention, when they're selling to government, you just need to manipulate the cataloguing information to make sure that you meet that criteria. But also, for those of you that are aware, you need to be front of mind before that RFP, RFQ bid process, because if you're coming in late, you're not going to be the front runner. And you're putting marketing under pressure to create that bid that's probably not going to be successful, and is just basically just wasting their time. So for those of you that have sold into government or massive organisations, you would know that document alone might be 30 to 60 pages, and George might be pulling his hair out if you're asking the people or marketing to do that. So for no outcome. So you need to be, that's even more validation of why you get the cataloguing correct from the start. You know what that criteria is, and then you simply manipulate the catalog depending on the persona that you're selling into.
Just quickly, for those that need to leave on the hour, thank you so much for joining us. For those who want to stick around, I'm happy to stick around for a bit longer and answer some more questions if you are, Adam.
Yeah.
Cool. I've got another good one from Alex. How would you engage the potential clients to share the data that you would catalog? So presumably, Alex, you mean then like when you're actually calling people to find out this information, and this is a question you get a fair bit, Adam, like how are you actually getting this information out of people?
Yeah, funnily enough, like you want to be pointing them to, you just need to find, I'm not going to say that there's a blanket cold call or cold DM or cold video sentence that's going to get that entry point, right? So you need to work out what's good for you. That might be something like, I'm not here to sell you anything, but I know you've got a provider in place. Would it be okay that I can just ask you some questions about it? Generally, that would always work. Or if they say, like, whatever you normally do, so say your background's only in cold calling, which mine used to be, you want them to almost say that they've got a provider. So then you can fire back, well, is it okay if you just tell me what you like about it? And then just pause and listen and wait, because that empty space will enable them to just start talking, and then you can ask them more questions.
Nice. And working at those entry points, that's obviously something that we discuss in depth in CRO school, and where you can really tap into Adam's wealth of experience doing this across so many different sectors. We have quite a specific one that someone sent through in advance of this. Oh, it's long. Let me just read it out.
Yeah.
Recently, the chemical international trade market has been bloody and competitive. I would like some resources to close business quickly, since the majority of customers already have suppliers they are loyal to. These suppliers have so much faith and trust in them as well. They are willing to make trade without deposits. We are not. I need help.
Okay. So if we go, we're not going to go back, but if you remember the graphic where it shows that catalog and what it gets you, that is pivotal of why you would need to catalog the market with certain questions to be able to address that. You may find you need to point them towards what would help them get started without having to do those things in terms of the deposit. But it does sound, if they're very ingrained, you may need to find out who's sweetening those deals to be able to make them happen and then try to work around that. Again, that information is going to come from cataloging. It's not going to come from anywhere else.
Okay. Other questions we've got. What's the difference between the self-serve and the cohort version of CRO School? The self-serve is you work through at your own pace, and you just get one live Q&A session with Adam and I at the end when you're ready for it. Whereas the full version, which next launches in September, you'll go through with a small cohort of other revenue leaders or aspiring revenue leaders. And we have multiple in-depth sessions, which is really going to help you pilot the system in your organization. As to what time zones it accommodates, we have people join us from the US, across Europe and Australia. And so we run them at times that are suitable for all of them. I think that's pretty much most of the questions we've got. Does anyone else have any questions in the chat before we wrap things up here? No? Okay. All good. Thank you so much. I hope that that gave you some insight as to what this whole go-to-market process looks like and brings clarity to it. If there's any feedback on it, things you think we could have made clearer, done better, Adam and I are always all for that. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much again for the massive interest and time. And make sure you check out all our other resources. If you've registered for this, we'll be sending them through to you as well. If not, they are in the chat. Adam, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you to everyone for being here for the circuit number 1.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, everyone.